I kind of always wanted to be a professional triathlete. Swim, bike, and run for a living, sign me up. Like, I love this stuff. The thing that's been changing is the reasons as to why I want to be a professional triathlete. The videos I create, the moments I try share, is all rooted in trying to help others because I've seen so much struggle around me. It's been so fulfilling, and if everything had to come to an end tomorrow, like, I know that I pursued what my heart desired, and I wasn't scared to just go for it and chase what I wanted to do. My biggest victory is that, for sure, is understanding that this is not about me. Like, the day I figured that out was definitely the biggest victory of them all. What is the one thing in my career that I really regret? I think I regret.
Hey, my name is Robin, and today, alongside William, we had the pleasure to discuss with Jamie Riddle, one of the most exciting triathletes on the scene. Born and raised in South Africa, Jamie lived the ultimate dream by competing in the Paris Olympics. We discussed how the early passing of his brother changed his life, his spiritual journey, what it's like to reach a lifetime goal, his new objective in triathlon, and much more. So now, let's welcome Jamie Riddle. What we like to do, because it's always nice to hear a story from the beginning, and I guess the first question we like to ask is how your childhood was, and what was your first connection with sports, especially with you living in South Africa. So it's something I think most of us we haven't been to South Africa, and we don't really know how things go. So yeah, it's not an original question, but it puts a nice start to your story.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think um, the start of where your journey begins in whatever you do is like such a pinnacle moment that shapes everything that you do from there on. And my beginning into sport, into triathlon, was like this mixture of like extreme um trauma and like devastation, but at the same time it gave me so much happiness and relief and exhilaration. So it was like this contrary ideas that were like mushed into one. But what I found as I grew older is like the degrees of trauma and heartache and these sorts of things was always sometimes higher, sometimes less, but there was always this pendulum that was swinging from good to bad moments, and sport has always been that constant that's helped me get through the good and the bad. So essentially, like, I grew up in, my mom had a previous marriage and she had 4 children, and then met my father, and obviously I was born, and but he came into a bit of a broken family just with the divorce. um and my first memories were quite late, and I think it has to do with the trauma of my beginning early years, just I guess what was happening and the energy around. And the beginning goes, my brother got involved with the wrong crowd. He started doing drugs, and one thing led to the next. He had a drug overdose, and was in a coma for 6 weeks. I remember glimpses of my brother. I was 5, 6 years old, so really young. But everything else around that moment, I remember quite vividly. And how I just remember seeing, he was in the coma for 6 weeks, and I remember seeing the broken pieces of the puzzle and the glass around. And that was a really hard upbringing in the beginning. I didn't understand what was going on, but I understood that I was being brought up in a family that was really broken from this tragedy. Now, my father, who kind of was very much in the picture, even with being my half brother, we would go to the hospital the whole time, and he said one day he sat on the side of the bed and he felt Reese, my brother, telling him, look at me fighting for my life, and look at you throwing yours away. My dad was 110 kgs, overweight, no sport. He used to be such a good sportsman and just lost his way in life. And that took him on a journey to like competing in Ironman and, doing triathlon and changing his life around. And that's kind of where my memory started, is seeing brokenness, how brokenness can lead to a journey of, you know, development and turning your life around. So that was like the really the beginning of my story. Begins with the passing of my brother, and how my dad turned his life around, and how I, as a son, wanted to be a part of my dad's journey. So running with him and just trying to see the good in days when he was out there.
And like, so during your first 6 years of your life, you were living with your mom and your dad, and were your brothers there as well, or living in a different house, and you were like, did you grow with them?
Yeah. So Um, the age gap is crazy. Like, my mom holds the record for the longest a child has been in like school, because it was always like 6 years apart. It was quite, and six children, so that's like 36 years of kids. But so yeah, they were somewhere in the house, somewhere not in the house. But when my brother passed, to kind of get over the healing, we moved houses, and it was just one sister and my other brother. But everyone was kind of very close in the picture. A tragedy like can take a broken family and really like put it together and try and have
Mm,
to unite something. Um, so yeah, it was there was a family always around, but I saw what the death of my brother did to some, and
mm,
some, it was really heartbreaking, and others
mm.
found a way to turn their life around.
Yeah, yeah. In the eyes of a 6 years old, it's not something that you're used to managing, I guess. Like, all the pieces of the puzzle, as you say, get there. But in the end, it also like created a unity in a part of your family in the end.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I don't think like I'm not gonna sit here and pretend to know exactly what was going on. I didn't really understand, but from the 6-year-old perspective, it was just like, Mom, why are you crying all the time? Dad, why are we going to the hospital every 2 days? Why can't I speak to Reese? And then it was, why is Reese not here? Under the I wasn't at the age where I could really understand death. I could only understand why, a kid knows happiness and
Mm,
sadness. I could see sadness, and that was kind of the thing that was always interesting to me. But I saw that sport brought happiness, that my dad going out for a run would bring happiness even in tragedy. I saw how if I performed in like a cross country meet in school, how that could like bring a smile to my mom's face. And those sorts of things kind of set me up to be like, okay, there's this thing that no matter what's going on around you, you can find happiness. No matter how crazy and chaotic the world can be, you can find happiness, and it can also bring happiness to people. And then we extend further into a country like South Africa, where there's so much divide in so many parts of the country. And the same thing, the same storyline continues. Like, Nelson Mandela's famous words were like, sports has the power to move nations, change the world. And it's kind of always been the theme that's gone throughout my life. And it's kind of, became everything that I wanted and pursued, because it's the one thing that was always constant, that brought something good.
mm.
Yeah.
And how do you grieve something that happens so young? Like, because I guess like grieving is a process that's really like difficult even when you're an adult, and you seem to understand things. Do you feel like you had a grief in different steps, or maybe you feel like you haven't finished that grief because you were too young maybe to start it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think like personally, with it being at such a young age, I I I didn't get to address any sort of grief, and I don't think I was able to create a connection with my brother so strong that forced me to grieve.
Mm.
Um, but what I can tell you is the loss of him hurt our family in multiple ways, and that pain still lost to today. You know, some have really excelled from their pain, and this is something I found very interesting. Is like how trauma can, for one, really propel you to new heights, and for another, can really put a stunt in your growth. Um, and I think when we talk about grieving, my grief or my pain more so comes from um, being the one to have excelled um, ahead of others that have not in my family, and trying to not have an imposter syndrome to that, to like, why have I managed to completely like excel in my life and become, you know, super driven, whereas others have, you know, kind of really struggled with that process. So that's been more my pain and my grief. But again, like the same storyline, you know, my sport does bring happiness to those around me, and my whole family's behind me and they're supporting and watching me. So yeah.
So your father kind of led the way at that time with you and triathlon, and you followed in his steps as he went and did his first Ironman. Did the rest of the family also went all in triathlon, or you were the only one to be like kind of crazy enough to start that sport?
Yeah, so he was actually a really good athlete when he was a youngster. So he like
Okay.
was a track runner. He was a triathlete. You know, he before Ironman was like branded Ironman in South Africa, he won the he came second in the PE version of Ironman. So he knew triathlon. He knew what the sport was about, and he knew Ironman. And his goal was always to go to Kona because of
Mhm.
apartheid, which is um, a time in South Africa where the whites put the black and colored people in a box and said, you know, you can't mix with us. Because of that, our country wasn't allowed to go and compete overseas, so he never got to do Kona as a professional. But then, kind of, this whole passing of my brother ignited that journey again and allowed for him to chase that dream again. And that was kind of where my memory kicks in. And he was the one that really like showed me what sport can do and what Ironman does, and showed me the discipline and the highs and the lows, and you know, yeah, paved the way for me. The rest of the family, not so much. My mom's the best supporter and helper, and you know, we all have our own thing. But no, the rest of the family. My sister's a good runner, but also physio. So that's about it.
And supporting an athlete is pretty much like sport, like, because it's really intense. Like, even
Yeah,
even physically, you need to put in a bit of yourself. And did you try like other sports, or was it always like triathlon? Like, did you have the other, like, I don't know,
yeah,
football a bit, rugby?
yeah.
'Cause-
I played every sport. So I don't know how it works in Europe, but we have provincials, like your provincial team, and then you have national team. So it's kind of
Mhm.
the, you know, I guess it would be like uh, clubs for you, maybe. I'm not too sure how it would work, but I played provincial soccer. I played national life saving, national water polo, provincial rugby, um, provincial athletics, provincial swimming. So I did every sport essentially. I did a bit of cricket, hockey, um, but for me, it was triathlon was just the one that really connected me to my family, and was the one that kind of it was such a challenging sport in terms of it. It really was the one that required the most amount of discipline to do. So that was the one I was really drawn to, that pushed me mentally, physically, and spiritually the most. The team sports was cool, but it never like challenged me as much as triathlon presented a challenge. So that was
Wait,
kind of
how hard is it to get to provincial level in a sport? Because you just mentioned that you were playing basically at a high level in what, like 6, 7 different sports. Just because I feel like you are like an elite athlete in every sports there is in South Africa. But
So like provincial is pretty tough. So you have like the country is divided up into each province. So you have like the eastern part of the country, the southern part, the western and the northern part, and you know, you have different So if
Okay.
you make provincial, then
It's
in
like
your
state in the US or something like that.
it's state, yeah. But the thing is,
Okay.
for like South Africa, it's such a big country. So my provincial team would, like, essentially, if I had to drive a car of like from my where I was based, it would be like everywhere like 4 hours. So within 4 hours of
Mm.
the circle would be covering that amount of schools. But yeah, I was definitely like a multi-talented sportsman across all fields. Um, and I think like if I wanted to, I could have picked a different sport and really gone and tried to do something in it. But um, yeah, I just triathlon was just something that really interested me and got me thinking on a deeper level.
Yeah, like it had a higher purpose in a way. Like your life being a water polo player would be pretty different. I mean, you never know. Respect for those guys, because it's
No, yeah, for
crazy
sure.
hard water polo, but we're
Yeah,
not gonna talk about that.
yeah, no, it is. I think like yeah, I think it's an interesting topic in the sense of um on what sport to pick, and especially in South Africa, triathlon is the one that doesn't have the money, which is, like I could have picked rugby or cricket or something that has so much funding, and I could have, made it a lot easier. But um, also having the Ironman in my hometown, I got to witness every single year it take place, and I got to witness every single year um, people just putting their lives into this thing, and watching that last little bit of that Ironman and seeing them cross the line and give everything, and every single person having a story. It really clicked at a young age that this Ironman thing is such a metaphor for life, that every one of us are going to try and do this thing come 30th of March, and we are going to like each have our own story, and no matter what, how good or how fast or how successful we are, it's going to be extremely tough, and we're going to see highs and lows throughout the day. And the person in first place is going to get the most cheers and success, and the person in last is going to get the least. But we both have the same sort of story. So that clicked at a young age that I wanted to be. I just was really drawn to that.
Yeah, but actually, like, uh, I feel like even the people that come dead last in an Ironman, they get as much cheering as the one that comes first, because people
Yeah,
really feel something like when they see someone that is really like in pain. People are
yeah.
they're like, okay, we need to have that guy, and they will just like
Yeah,
shout out so
I
much.
think
Like the
people connect to stories, man. Like they connect to the stories, and like the emotion that those people at the end possess is like
mm,
it's just you can feel their story, you can feel their struggle, and like those ones at the ends are coming from those like super from being obese to completing an Ironman, or from
uh-huh.
being a drug addict to completing an Ironman. Like there's so many stories like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of like they do get the cheers, but I think like obviously the guy in first, there's just more crowd there, but I think it's just beautiful to witness like the emotions of an Ironman.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you said, like the amount of stories. Like I wonder how many interesting trajectories are like concentrated into an Ironman, because usually it's not something that you wake up one day and you say, okay, I'm gonna do an Ironman. Maybe today a bit more, I'd say,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
it's getting hyped.
Getting popular,
Like
yeah,
William, he did an Ironman like 2 years ago, I think.
yeah,
3 years ago, I never know. And at the time, I thought it was pretty amazing. Like I didn't know many people had who did triathlon first and who did an Ironman, and now it's true that it's getting a bit more mainstream, but with big brackets.
yeah,
But yeah, that's certainly a sport that for you to have the will to train as much, you need to have something to get from it, even if it's not professional like you do, and even more if it's professional like you do.
yeah.
But yeah,
Okay. Like you said that you kind of had a moment where you had to choose a sport that you wanted to do, right? And you said that for triathlon, it was a sport that would push you like physically, mentally, and you also mentioned spiritually. And so I was a bit surprised at that moment. How is triathlon pushing you like spiritually?
I have an interesting spiritual journey. Like, I think I was I grew up in a household that was, we went to the church on the Sunday, and then when we lost my brother, um, it was like, no way there's a God. There's no ways that a God could take, the life of an 18-year-old boy. And we kind of shunned it, and it was like not really spoken of in the house. And then in this journey of like the whole, my dad's taking on the Ironman, um, I I had come across a friend that kind of just spoke of this person that at the time it was literally just this person, Jesus, and telling me all these amazing stories, and it was quite interesting to me. And one thing led to the next, and I led my family back into the church, and we were getting involved. And but then, as I got more involved into triathlon, um, it became this self-obsessive goal that was so ego-centered driven, and that kind of led, like, just I want to win, I want to be the champion, it's all about Jamie, it's Jamie's life, it's Jamie's world. And how can I get fitter, how can I get stronger, how can I do this? It was all about me. And through that I just like completely lost like my moral ground, and turned like kind of away from everything I believed in. And and through that, like turning my back on what I believed to be true, or what I knew to be true, I just started making decisions that were not, um yeah, it was not good decisions. And until a point where like it just broke me, and then I kind of found my way back to uh that, Christianity and Jesus. And then now when I say it grows me mentally, physically, and spiritually, I do this now not for myself, but for, I try and make it about, as much as possible, about not only the kingdom of God, but trying to um show that I can be a testimony for what the words of Jesus were. um so like that's obviously sometimes a controversial topic when you bowl and you stand out and you speak about this, because not everyone's going to believe that Jesus is Lord. But for me, that is my truth, that is my lifesaver, and it's what I believe in. So I stand on that, I stand on that ground. And Ironman helps me grow spiritually, because um it pushes me to many breaking points. And when you're at breaking points, you realize you can't do things a lot. You can't do things on yourself. We can try and do things and conquer this world by ourselves, but at the end of the day, you're going to realize that we are never going to be able to do these things. And forces me to turn to Christ, to lean on for strength, and to really find like some growth there.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to see how much sports and triathlon in that example has shaped your life. Because if it wasn't for triathlon, then so many things in your life would be so different. Like, do you think there was a moment where, like, you started to think, or rather, that triathlon took a really important part in your life, like more professionally, that you could see like a career in the sport, or
Like, are you saying, is there a moment where I thought that this was going to be more than just a career?
that it would be a career? Because it
I
helped
kind
you
of,
at first, but
yeah, I kind of always wanted to be a professional triathlete. The thing that's been changing is the reasons as to why I want to be a professional triathlete. So
Mhm.
that has been the changing one. I knew that like from the beginning, like triathlon, swim, bike, and run for a living, sign me up. Like I love this stuff, and I still love this stuff, and it's so fun. But the reasons as to why I do what I do shifts, and I don't know,
Mhm.
like I don't know if it's just me, like if I'm the only one that's having these like really hard moments, or deep thoughts, or struggling with a lot of questioning of life. But because of that questioning, like my whole reason as to why I do what I do has shifted over time, from being more like, obviously in the beginning it was basically just an escape, to that escape at some point not being escape anymore, because it was a job. So then it became the job of Jamie, like it's all about Jamie. And then from there on, it evolved into like what it is now, which again, as I said, like um what 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 it is looking inward, finding my why and doing what I do for others and not for myself. Because if I'm doing it for myself, it just the pit runs dry at the end.
And coming back on the spirituality topic, because obviously, as you said, being a pro athlete is kind of a egocentric. You are meant to live an egocentric life, or you are forced to live an egocentric life to perform. Is it hard at that moment to, and you said it was hard, but I wonder, because I've seen a lot of athletes, especially in football, because I knew a guy at school. He was in the process of being a pro footballer, and he got more and more spiritual. The better he got at football, and I wonder if maybe this can help you put your feet on the ground, put your feet back on the ground, because this is a life that's so weird, that you're so not meant to live. A life where suddenly your family, your friends, they see you a bit differently. You start to be the center of everything, and yourself, you can lose also track of normal things. Like, I
Yeah,
wonder if
I think for me it's like there's two moments, because obviously this is now very general, right? But there's two moments you're gonna find God. You're gonna find God when you hit rock bottom, or you're gonna find God when you're at the mountain peak. In between there, it's gonna be a case of, someone telling you about it, or you connecting with it, or you actively searching for it. But there's two moments, you hit rock bottom and you realize there is nowhere else for me to go than to surrender and say, I cannot do this anymore. And I need to find or lean on something to give me strength to get out of this moment. The other alternative is the mountain peak, where you start to achieve everything you ever wanted. You're able to get all the girls, you're able to get all the money, you're able to, and there's levels to this, of course. Like my level of my mountain peak is not the same as Will Smith or Cristiano Ronaldo, of course. But I realized I started to get some little bit of fame. I was able to kind of, get kind of whatever goal I wanted. I was able to, like, I had money. I was doing well in races, like everything that I ever like kind of pursued of this life and thought, okay, that is gonna fix the hole that's in my heart, or that longing, or that is gonna fix the depression, or that is gonna fix, the anxiety, or that, constantly pursue, constantly chase. Then you get to a point where you're obtaining all of this stuff. And then for me, it was like, okay, now I'm going to look for this somewhere else, alcohol, in partying, in more ego boosts, and more like all these sorts of things. And again, the pit is just never ending. And that was the moment for me where I had to say, okay, is the rest of my life going to be chasing emptiness? Because that's what it felt like at the moment. The more I got, the more empty I became. So then I questioned and I said, you know what? I've got everything in that point in my life I felt like I wanted, but I'm at the most unhappy and sad I've ever been. And then obviously there was something that was an acceleration to the point, like as to why I, on that day, turned to Jesus, or turned to God. Um, and yeah, that's kind of you talk about this, like soccer players, or you see these sportsmen that get really successful, or even like musicians, or whatever the case may be. And I think it is this understanding that, like, when you're working or something like that, you're saying to yourself, okay, if I get this sort of money, then things will be okay. And just from my personal experience, it was never okay, and it only just became emptier. And then there was this book that said, don't chase happiness, chase peace. And that hit me. And then, reading this book is different to what some people will put out there of what a Christian is supposed to be. It's not necessarily about being perfect. It's actually the complete opposite. It's understanding that we are so
Mm.
far from perfect, but like just understanding that, like, peace is what we're after, not happiness. And once that clicked for me, and I was able to like understand, and don't get me wrong, man, like to this day, every single day, I struggle with my flesh. I got human desires to have money, to have fame, to
Mm.
have all these sorts of things. But understanding where my like rock is, that's helped me a lot. Because I was this close to quitting.
Okay, because you were not feeling good, even though things had started to click. Like, yeah, you were not feeling good in yourself.
No, I was yeah, I was very close to quitting just because everything was going right, but I was just super unhappy.
Mm.
Um, and it was just a confusing time for me.
And it makes me think about this idea of when things don't go well in your life, it's like you always attribute it to yourself, and when everything starts to click, then it's hard to attribute it only to yourself, and it's like it's natural to have this drive to think in something bigger and to think in something like much, I don't know how to say, but much like,
Yeah, bigger than yourself, I
yeah,
guess.
bigger than yourself. I was trying to think of the right word, but I
Yeah,
don't have this. I don't have it, and it's a bit because sometimes you would need that faith. You would need that confidence in yourself in the moments where you things don't click, and then you don't really find it, and here we talk about like Christianity, but for some people it's other religion, or it's a different form of spirituality. But yeah, I feel I find it quite paradoxical that when things go well, then something in your head says, okay, it's going too well, it's weird, and then you start to lose a bit this pleasure of accomplishing thing, and then maybe that puts you on the right path, that is peace instead of happiness, peace instead of accomplishing every time bigger things and getting more money or more fame. And I
yeah,
guess now you must feel like more at peace, uh
yeah.
in,
No, for sure. I think like again, we're not gonna sit here and say that I've got it all under control. There's no way. None of us do. But what I can say is that my self-worth is not in the same things it was a year or two ago. And yeah, I'm definitely a lot more life in me, a bigger light, a bigger, a bigger meaning as to why I want to do what I want to do. And like, we talk about spirituality, and for sure, at the end of the day, I do want to spread that message, but even on a much more simpler level. It's just I do what I do to help people as well. The videos I create, the moments I try share, the message I try to give is all rooted in trying to help others, because I've seen so much struggle around me, and I still see so much struggle around me. And it's always going to be rooted in that. So uh, on a deeper level spiritually, but on a more simplistic level, just making life a little bit easier, and sport can also do that.
yeah.
And I was thinking, when did that shift happen in your life?
Like that
That
December 2023. Like
okay.
obviously it was a massive build-up of
Mhm.
of unhappiness, growth, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Um, but I was incredibly unhappy. Like yeah, it was a really really tough time. So December, I took like 2 3 months off season or something crazy like this, and I just started partying a lot, like every single night for like 6 weeks straight, almost festivals, everything that you can ever imagine. And yeah, someone just asked me to go for coffee, went for coffee, and he shared his testimony. And the testimony was an overlap of what I was going through in my life. And he prayed for me, and the presence of God just came over me, and I broke down and never felt so comfortable, or like or happy, or it's hard to explain. Like the pain was
At peace.
yeah, yeah,
Mm,
at
mm.
peace. And then yeah, that was the change. And but then it wasn't just like an overnight fix. You don't just go from not believing in God to like, okay, God is the answer to every single solution. And still to this day, like I struggle with giving things over to the Lord, or giving and letting control of everything, because that is what Christianity is. It's like saying, I can't do anything. So I still struggle with that today. But the journey was, okay, this thing has happened to me, and I'm someone that needs to know. So how am I going to know? They say there's a book of truth, and I just like kind of locked myself up and tried to read as much of this book and see, do I align? Do I believe that these can be truths? And then, that one thing led to the next, and that's what I came on, and then got baptized, and now, I'm doing my thing. But I'm definitely like, we can talk about spiritually as much as you guys want. I love it, of course. But I do want to I do understand, for some people it does bring like a cringe to the spine, or does some people do struggle with it. But yeah, I just, the message is like, there we can, through sport, we can grow and we can evolve, and if God exists, he'll find you at your right moment.
No, but the reason I was asking you about the date was because I wanted to kind of understand whether or not your first experience of the Olympics like maybe changed it. But I think then it must be the opposite. It must be that experience that you had with your spirituality that probably changed the way you experience the Olympics. And I was thinking about what happened for the men's triathlon in Paris, and you had the race being cancelled the day before, and it was really uncertain whether or not you guys were going to swim or not, which is a huge thing when you've been probably preparing for this race for like months or even years, right? So
Yeah,
did you feel kind of calm at that moment, like, or were you like super nervous, or how were you
yeah,
feeling like?
it's a good question. Like, there's obviously like so many emotions going on. um like, of course, I think the biggest thing for me is, the desires in our heart are like warranted, and they're like, they God wants you to pursue these things, and they wants you to, like, because that's what brings fire to us. But also understanding that, like, at the end of the day, like, Olympics just it's, people forgotten about already. Like, I can ask people, maybe not you guys who maybe done your research, but I can ask like someone who watched the triathlon. They won't even be able to tell you came second or third. So I think understanding that, like, this is all just a game and it's all just fun. I think it definitely brought like a lot of calmness to me. But of course, like, I train and I put my whole life into this, and I want to win the Olympic gold medal, and I want to do these things. Or I want to have a great race, whatever the case may be. So when things all of a sudden take a turn, it is rough for everyone. But I do feel like for me, maybe slightly less, because I was just, it is what it is, and we move on to the next day.
And how was your experience of the Olympics, like aside from the race and the stress of when will we race?
It was an interesting one, man. Like, it was it was everything I'd ever dreamt it would have been, but also not at all, if that makes any sense. Like, for sure, the day itself was incredible. Like, the crowds, the fans, and the support the French people put up was something I've never seen before. Like, standing on that start line, looking over to the crowd and seeing hundreds of thousands of people just like getting ready or anticipating a great moment in sport was surreal. That even today I get like goosebumps. But the interesting thing for me was like the loneliness that I felt at the same time, and the same, like finishing the race and going back to the Olympic Village. It was an interesting one. It's literally feels like a hospital room in those Olympic villages, and so it was interesting. Like, I definitely saw a dream come to life, and it was amazing. But at the same time, I saw far more people disappointed than happy. I think I saw like two happy
Hmm.
people off that finish line, and that made me a bit sad. And I tried to not be one of those. I wasn't happy with my race, but I tried to, reshape the way I thought of it. Because, yeah, I think like we put too much emphasis on the outcome and not enough emphasis on the journey.
Yeah, I wonder, like at the start line, it's hard to tell yourself that, but in the end, yeah, like It's a weird experience as well to be at the start of the dream, like it's a universal dream, like to be at the start of an Olympics, whatever the sport. Sometimes it's hard to enjoy a moment that you've anticipated or that you've imagined that much, and then you go back to the to the hospital with your little bag, and you sleep on your bed with a cardboard. But yeah.
I don't want to get it mixed up for any young people that's going to listen to this. Like,
Mm,
I don't want anyone to think that it's not everything that you think it is, because it is. Like, it is definitely it is that. But I made like a maybe slightly controversial post after the Olympics. Like, the question was it worth it? And like my first answer was no, because was that like singular moment worth everything that I'd gone through to get there? No. But in the bigger picture of things, and if I rewind the tape to all the moments that has led me to that moment, it is worth it 1,000 times over. So for someone that's young who says, okay, I'm going to try become an Olympian today, and he pursues that with everything that he has, whether he achieves that or not, it's going to be worth it. So the day is not what makes it worth it. It is the
mm,
journey. I have so many friends that could have been on the start line that are like neck and neck with us, that just did not make the cut and have been trying for, you know, 20 years to make it and didn't. And I saw how that's broken them. But, you know, they walked the exact same journey. The only difference is I got to stand on that start line and experience, you know, a really, really cool race. But, you know, when I look back at everything, Olympics and prior, and you had to say, like, you know, list me some of the best moments, there's a chance that that race doesn't even make it, you know? That's
mm.
that's crazy to think. But so I think, just to be clear, like, when I talk about the hospital bed, when I talk about the loneliness, like, it's not that it wasn't worth it. It definitely was. It just was interesting, and I think it does tie in back to my spiritual journey on as to maybe why I felt those things in the Olympic Village, because there's no doubt that pursuing a higher purpose makes you uh, look around with different lens.
But in the end, like it's just you know, people say it's the journey, not the destination. And in the end, if everybody that has had a successful life, or that has a bit of spirituality, or yeah, if people say that, that must mean something, and you've just like you've lived this moment, so that doesn't feel too weird to me that you say that, because in the end it's the yeah, it's the personification of this quote that it's easy, like I think it's easy to feel how it would be true. It's the journey, not the destination, but a few of us will reach the destination, so it's difficult, you know, to really agree with it. And I guess maybe in the 10 years you look back at this moment and say, oh, it was really amazing, because memories are easier to be. Yeah, it's for me, I find it's easier for me to get lost in my memories and feel super happy than to feel super happy on the moment.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, I mean, but like, again, like, getting in that bus, going to the race, pulling up at the race, and like just seeing like heads turn when they open the bus and we stand in there and everyone like start cheering. And, you know, as I said, like, walking down that start line, not being able to hear on the course, like, those things were, it
mm,
was crazy. Like, it was absolutely insane. And I understand why people want to be coming back for more. Only thing is that, like, crossing that line is just seeing how many people cried and sad and disappointed and angry, and
mm,
people getting off the bus and wanting to walk to the village instead of like being in the present moment. So, you know, and yeah, that was sad. But for me, for myself, like, if the day couldn't have gone, or the lead up and day couldn't have gone any worse, but I don't feel like I was sitting there, you know, with a sad face. Like, I made sure to enjoy it. Like, the person standing next to me on the start line was actually a good friend of mine, and I just said, like, yo, we have to enjoy this moment regardless of the outcome.
yeah.
Do you want to go back?
I do want to go back. Yeah, I think I do want to go back. I don't know for which sport, but we'll see.
Water polo, maybe. If you start now,
Yeah, I
you
don't
have a
know.
chance.
Time trial cycling sounds very interesting to me. Um,
Okay.
I think that would be really cool, especially with being on the Ironman journey now. Like dropping back down the distance, like I could definitely do it and achieve it. I believe in that, but what I would be pursuing is, another like maybe top 15, top 10 position,
Hmm.
which it doesn't change much. Whereas like going for a different sport, and I'm not saying now I'm going to go for a medal, but like changing sports and doing it in a different sport would be pretty cool. And obviously the amount of time I'm investing on the bike and all these sorts of tests we're trying to do to get faster aerodynamically and all these things, I think it would be a slightly easier shift. Not easy, but it would be,
It
you
would
know,
make sense. Yeah.
it would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you get to meet like crazy athletes in the cafeteria, or was there
I
like
think
moments like this?
I think like everyone is like that's the thing that was very interesting in the village. Like it's 10,000 athletes across. I think it's 306 events. Every single person that is in that village is like on a different level of, you can just see it in their body and the way that you get 6'8" women, but you get like 4 foot men, and it's like this everyone is so unique in their own way with their unique bodies and their unique sort of like attributes. Obviously, like I got to see when I arrived, it was the day of um, the opening ceremony. So the basketball team was there, so you could see like the head of LeBron James and stuff. Like everyone trying to get to them. I was, a meter away from Djokovic. You saw like Simone Biles in the village. You saw like crazy people. But I'm not someone that's gonna go up and say, "Hey, I'm Jamie." Like they don't. Um, but yeah, yeah, it's very very cool. Like seeing so many people that you've watched on TV your whole life. It's insane.
Yeah. It's funny
Yeah.
what you said, like you have all the extremes. It made me think of, the Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, like they're all coming with their special traits, like
Yeah.
with a dance, like, and in
Yeah.
the end, it's a bit similar, like between a gymnast and basketball player, it's completely the opposite.
Yeah. You kind of yeah, you're watching there and you're like in the cafeteria and you're like playing kind of guess the sport. Like you looking at these people and be like, man, what is this? What is this sport? Like, okay, you're built incredibly well, but you're 5 foot. And then you look at the next person, they're kind of like a bit chubby, but like you can still see they're in shape. And then like you obviously got the triathletes, which is like we kind of skinny strong. Like it's weird. Like
Yeah.
you're definitely not built like a runner, but you're still skinny.
Mm.
So I can imagine they're looking at us like, what do you guys just look? Yeah. And then you got the runners and you got all these. It's super super interesting.
Did you did you have time, like, do do people have time to make like friends at those kind of events, or is it like you focus on your thing and then when it's over, then yeah, you stay with your team?
No, so I didn't really get a chance to make many friends. I mean, obviously we're in the triathlon
Mm.
triathlon bubble. Um, but I'm not gonna walk up to a guy and say, "Hey, like I'm Jamie." They focusing on the event, and then if I go up to a girl, they're probably gonna think I'm trying to get their number. So I
Yeah.
kind of just chilled. But
Okay.
changing the what you call it, the badges, like the country things. That was an opportunity to um like say hello or meet people.
Okay.
You know.
Wh- I have a kind of question. It's well, people maybe have like deeper reflections after they achieve their main objective for their season or their like career in sports. Was it straightforward for you to go back into like full all-in tryhard training in triathlon, or did you consider like maybe, hey, what if I would just like train 10 hours a week, be a coach, do something else, and have it good? Because that would be like a feasible option for you, or you still have that fire in you that you want to achieve something in sports?
It's a good question. No, I definitely have not come anywhere close to what I believe I can achieve in this, um, in this sport. So I knew that I was never gonna, go away, but it was just a question of exactly what I wanted out of it. Really, so like looking inward and like self-reflecting and saying, what can I do in this sport? And because of that, like I got to the decision of wanting to do Ironman and really go on a new journey.
And do you feel like this like it suits you better, the Ironman, because you've had good results already? So do you feel like you've got a chance at doing something right? You mentioned that you would be interested in winning the world champs. That's quite a bold objective, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't think I actually, I mean, I wasn't, obviously I wasn't terrible at the short course thing, but I don't think I achieved, anything that's like, it never reached what I was, dreaming of as a youngster. Um, but if we look at those dreams that a youngster had, it was actually never Olympics or short course triathlon. It was always the Ironman World Championships. That is the event that always hit home with me. And it was always just a case of like, oh, you're too young, you need to wait, or whatever the case may be. So understanding like that, when I say self-reflecting, it was like what is really going to drive me to dig deeper and to go further than I ever had before. And I think that is where I fell on the Ironman and said, this is where I feel like I can have the most impact on the world, because for me now it's not about becoming world champion, it's about what I can do when I am world champion, like what I can do for my country, what I can do for the people along there, who can I inspire. I get messages every second day from people saying like, that video like got me out of bed, or this really hit with me, and I do try and do these sorts of things, and that's the purpose. So in terms of like the actual distance of Ironman, I think it suits my strength slightly more. If we like actually talk about the nitty gritty things, being a strong swimmer in the front of the race, I feel like I can develop into a really strong rider. And if you look at my half marathon time, it's a lot better than my 10K time or my 5K time. So I do know that even on tests, it's shown that I am more of a diesel engine than, shooting the lights out. But yeah, that's kind of the whole decision. But I think it all just stems back to, this is where I can have the most impact and where I can actually do something.
Your main goal is to, of course, do well, but more as a mean to like develop maybe triathlon with people that are more in need, maybe get to a moment where a black South African can compete as well. Like, do you feel like in 10 years there will be more diversity in those kind of sports? Are we on that journey?
I hope so. I don't think we're on the journey right now.
Mm.
Um, if we look at triathlon as a whole, there's not a good
Mm.
representation of color. There's multiple reasons for that. In South Africa specifically, I do think it does come down to a financial issue. Now, if you go to an African boy black African in the townships, and you say, "Would you like to come play soccer with me? Would you like to come to the swimming
Ouais.
pool?" 9.999 times
Mm.
out of 10, they're gonna say, "Let's go play soccer, or let's go for a run." So that's fine. We're not looking to have, an all, black South African triathlon team, but we want to have the access. We want to be able to give them the access to be able to compete. Unfortunately, we are paying catch up in our country like no other, where um, even to this day it's not equal, and I don't know if it ever will be equal. Um, but I think, as we said, like I'm also not going to sit here and say that me becoming world champ is not something that I want, and I want to be world champ. Like, of course, that can be simultaneously true with the understanding that I can use it as a platform to do something bigger. And I think that reason for wanting to do something bigger gives me a better chance of becoming world champion, because it's not about me. It's really not just about me in the sense of like, oh, because I'm going to be world champion, I'm going to be rich and famous and all these sorts of things. But I think, like, you know, becoming world champion really opens a lot of doors for me to, if I do it right, to be able to make an impact on my country, to, as you said, like, you know, and it's never too you know, it's never too early to start. Like, the famous saying is like, the best time to start was yesterday and the second best time is right now. So I am trying to put my, you know, my footprint in the sand and like do some things with the little influence I have now and the little resources I have now. Because if you're not doing it at the A grade, you're not going to be doing it when you've got, you know, everything. So um I think, yeah, it's a interesting topic, but we're not there yet, and it is obviously quite sad.
I have a weird question, but that's something that's interesting to me. You'll tell me if you can answer that question. But how does it feel to be South African? Like, it's really, because for me, feeling French, it's it's easy to know what it feels like. It's not easy, but there are kind of a vibe that I can, like, I could put into words. But South Africa, like, for us as French or as European, it's a country that seems really complicated. That's weird, but also it's attracting. You know, it's not a country where you feel like you would never set foot in. So how does it feel like to be South African with all the 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 weight of history of this country?
Such a good question. I think, like, if we can if everyone could embrace the message of what South Africa should stand for today, it would be the proudest and the most humbling and amazing feeling to be South African. And it's something that I try to embrace, and it's something that I try to live out on the day to day. And, you know, the uniting of the Rainbow Nation is just something beautiful that, you know, when we win that Rugby World Cup final, sorry guys, but it was absolutely like something that just took our country to like uniting, and that beauty of seeing people from different walks of life with different cultures and, you know, different interests just come together. It is beautiful. But on the contrary, like, it's tough being a South African, especially as a white South African, because sometimes I'm perceived to be like, I'm okay with the divide, and I'm okay with, you know, the being like the privileged minority, where I'm not. Like, I'm not happy with that, and I'm not happy that I'm the one that gets to drive the car home from work, whereas other people have to take 6 taxis and get there by foot. I do believe that we have choices to develop and get better in our life, but I am very acceptant of the fact that we have it easier. So I am proud to be South African, and I have had the opportunity to race for a different nation. I'm half British. I've got a British passport. You know, other nations have approached. I will never do that. I want to represent my country, and I want to, you know, try and help this country as much as possible, because if you come and visit this country, it is very beautiful, and the people are, you know, very, very amazing people and happy people. So it's an interesting question, but I think the ultimate answer, I'm proud, but I'm also at the same time a bit sad with what's going on.
And it seems like sport has been a great way for this country to get together, but in the end it's never enough. Like, I would say, even in France, like, there are also always division, and sometimes when you win the World Cup, then it feels like it's okay and that everything is good, and then it like, a country to be united needs more than great teams, but it's still something. So yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah, no, for sure. I think, like, the one of the problems is, like, when you have poverty, it really causes a divide. Like, the bare minimum is equal opportunities. And I think if we could get to the point where we have equal opportunities and living, which unfortunately I don't think will ever be a true reality, but until that day, it's going to be really hard to overcome the crime and to overcome all these sorts of things because, you know, if I if I had nothing to feed my family and someone was coming past on a 25,000 euro bike, it makes it very hard to look away. You know, that's I'm not going to put the blame on anyone for doing um to I always say like it's not the person making the decision, it's the circumstances around him. And of course we can make better decisions and make better choices, but we have to be aware of the circumstances cause people to do things.
Mm. Yeah, I know. And I imagine that it's a very complicated topic, and then yeah, it's rooted in many things, and whenever there's inequality in a country, I feel like it's really hard like to bridge that gap between the two, because the more inequality, the more chance that middle class disappears, and then you you are in two extremes. But no, but it was interesting what you said. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and the like the last thing we can do is just stop talking about it. Like I think lots of people want to avoid the topic because there's maybe something that I've said that is slightly off that could get me into trouble or whatever the case may be. But we have to talk about it, and it's okay with being wrong and having like
Mm,
maybe the wrong idea and being corrected on these things. But as soon as we stop talking about it, as soon as we stop just letting it go by, that's where it's just gonna get worse.
mm.
So yeah, but it is super tricky and I don't
Mm.
have answers.
Yeah, and we don't have the knowledge to have a start of answer. But
Yeah.
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 But in the end, among all the nationalities, I mean, British and South African, you always chose to represent South Africa, right? But when you
Yes.
said all the nations have approached you, like, what does that mean?
No,
I
no, not
didn't
not
know that.
not not all the nations. No, no, no. So you can like there's many people that have like um gone to go race for trying to think of an example now, I'm going blank, but uh some maybe Eastern European country, or there's ways to get like
Mm,
another nationality, whether you buy a property or whatever the case may
Is that a
be. Like
thing?
yeah, you can definitely race for another country. Obviously, like for some countries, like if your mother's half Belgium or your parents are half French,
Yep.
like it's much easier to be racing for Belgium, because
Yeah.
if you want to represent
mm,
France, you have to be top three in the world to go to the Olympics. So there's a lot of people that are like racing for different countries.
mm.
Obviously, you get married, you get opportunities, you race for a different country. Um, but yeah, for sure happens.
Yeah, and depends. I think yeah, it exists, William, because there's a depending on the country, it's easier or harder to get the passport.
Citizenship. Yeah, yeah,
And I guess maybe like countries like Qatar and now would have a
yeah,
lot of strong guys coming in many
yeah.
Then
sports.
maybe my dream of going to the Olympics is not over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go, buddy.
I will
Go
find the
represent
smallest
Saudi
country and I
Arabia,
will
man.
send an email and be like, okay, guys,
Yeah,
what does it take?
yeah.
I have to come 10
Saudi
years?
Arabia
Okay.
would be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. But it's funny because we talked about like kind of like, huge events uniting countries. So you talked about the Rugby World Cup, which was obviously a huge pain for us. I still remember that game and I don't want to talk about it. It
yeah. Let's not
reminds,
do that. We're friends now. Let's not ruin this.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not you, it's just the referee, but we won't know. Okay, I stop. But it's
Oh,
like, so I was thinking about the the World Cup of soccer that we had, and then when we won it in France, it was just like everybody was out in the streets, and it was just amazing. And then I was
yeah,
thinking about like triathlon, and you said that for you it has always been bigger to do an Ironman, or like the idea that you have as a kid, your dream had not been to be like an Olympian, but rather to do like an Ironman. And I feel like in triathlon, it's not very common that you find a sport where the biggest event is not the Olympics, but rather like another like competition in that sport. So you will be doing your first triathlon in a few weeks. So how do you feel? Do you feel like more excited for that triathlon rather than for the Olympics, or
Yeah,
you
that's
don't try to
actually
compare and it's just like a different thing?
no, no, no. This is the biggest. This feels like the biggest moment of my life. It's weird that you asked that question because it actually is true. Um, I This race just means so much to me. Like obviously Ironman as a whole has a whole like meaning behind it, but this specific like Ironman Nelson Mandela Bay, like this is my this is my bread and butter. This is where I grew up. This is everything I've ever known. This is kind of the first taste of what I got of what triathlon is. It's actually the only taste I've got of what triathlon. My first ever triathlon was Iron Kids at the age of 4 in Nelson Mandela Bay. And now I'm making my debut 20 years later, 21 years later, as a fully fledged professional. You know, my dad has done the race, whatever, 10 times. He's won his age group
10
there.
times?
Yeah, crazy, bro. He's won, he's coached, like helped running for Reynard Sissing and Carl Buckham, two South Africans that's won the race. You know, one of the guys, James Cunnama, who's done that. Like my training partner, Bradley Weiss, has done it as a professional who's come fifth. It's everything, you know, it's like everything in once. And like I'm going there and, um, you know, really putting not only the country, but my town on my back and like saying like, you know, here we go. And everyone's getting behind me and they're really supporting me and like passionately supporting me. And it's really cool to see. I think like I've never been so expectant of a race, so nervous of a race, but also so excited for a race. And um, it's going to be a tough one because it's a strong start list coming.
Yeah, like the 1 month before the race is going to feel like forever.
Yeah, we're already in. I would love for it to be 2 months, man, but you know that's the time God's given me. So we'll see how this goes. But um, yeah, I think like it's it's actually kind of gone on the inverse is like it's time's moving quickly, man. Time's moving very very quickly. We're 3.5 weeks
Oh yeah?
on that start line. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because like the night before Christmas, it takes like forever, like the hours is not going quick. Like you want to be the morning where you wake
Yeah,
up
but
and
is it
expect
the
the
same?
gift.
Is it the same like Christmas and the race? Like, cause in, I mean, I don't know. I've never been pro at anything. I mean, yeah, that sounds sad, but it's true. To be honest, it's true. Uh, and like,
At
do
anything?
you get? No, no. I mean, I've been a pro at working a normal job, which was insane. But like, is it more excitement or more pressure? Christmas, it's full excitement. Like if you have pressure before
Yeah, that's
opening,
true. You
uh,
don't have pressure
Yeah,
for Christmas.
and
yeah,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
when is the pressure the highest? Like just before the race, during the race, 1 week before the race, like.
Um, I think like usually it's kind of just the day of the race the way I would feel like a bit of pressure maybe. I guess with the Olympics there was quite a bit of build-up of pressure. I think for this race from the moment I announced that it was a lot of pressure. Um, but pressure like pressure's a privilege, all these sorts of things. But um, you know, the fact that I am gonna be the guy that gets to have that pressure or gets to, you know,
Mm,
stand at the forefront of that
mm,
and be the guy from our hometown. It's crazy to think like I actually that's the thing is I actually did it. I did what that 4-year-old wanted to do. I wanted to be the guy who was gonna stand on that line and not I'm not saying win, like I'm saying
Mm,
give it my best shot to win and fight
mm.
till the death to win. And I've done it. Like, yeah, whatever happens on the day, whether I win or whether I'm walking in that marathon, I've done it. Like I am that guy. I did what I wanted to do and I'm gonna be pursuing this race for the next 10, 15 years until I win it. But um, you know, like I'm here, like I've arrived. Like we don't need to sit here and say like, oh, when you win that thing, then like have you done it? Like no, like I'm already holding that. I've already done that. So it's a very, very, very cool feeling and um the amount of like joy that I've got from pursuing that and becoming that and constantly pursuing that is has been life changing. Like my life has been so fulfilled. You know, it's been seeing the highest of highs, the lowest of lows, and it's extreme at some points, and it's, I feel like chasing a dream like this accelerates those highs and lows more than a normal life would. But it's been so fulfilling, and if everything had to come to an end tomorrow, like, I know that, I pursued what my heart desired, and I wasn't scared to just go for it, and like not listen to society, and chase, what I wanted to
Mm.
do. The fruits of my labor, I see them every single day when I get to wake up and really choose what I want to do, and not what I have to do.
Maybe like it's not pressure is a privilege, but choosing your pressure is a privilege. I feel
It
like
is.
that would be more
Yeah.
true. And
Yeah.
that's what you do in a way. But and you're really young. Like if people couldn't know your age and listening to that conversation, maybe they would feel like you're 30 and it's gonna be the last race of your life. But you're still at the beginning of your career, and even more in a sport that maybe is even better for people with more experience. Like maybe your peak it will be in
Yeah.
5 or 10 years, maybe.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is funny. Like, it does maybe feel like I'm speaking for like the tail end of my journey, but I literally have not even stepped on the line of a full Ironman yet. But yeah, I think the fact that I'm starting out my journey knowing things that maybe it takes people their whole career to realize or come to is really exciting for me. And it's yeah, it's obviously, it makes me happy that I have this purpose. It makes me happy that I want to share this with everyone.
Hmm.
um yeah, it's there's so much like driving me.
Yeah, it feels like you are set up right to enjoy your career. And I feel like it's too bad that in the end, pro athletes are people, are kids with a dream that are trying to touch that dream. And sometimes you see and you feel like there's a lot of disappointment, frustration, and maybe at first that was the idea of emulation as well, is that it's just to put out there the message that it's amazing to be trying at your trying to reach your dream, and a career in the end it's pretty short. Like if you don't enjoy the journey from making it to maybe having some wins, having some loss,
Yeah.
then you're gonna feel so much regret in the end. So maybe you've got the best thing, that is being set up right to enjoy the show, and and then wait and see, if you
Yeah,
put the
yeah. No, for sure. I think like, and again, we always narrow down and zoom into like, and focus on today, and we sometimes forget to zoom out and see that bigger picture. So there's moments where like I'm caught up in when thick of it, and I don't, always see that perspective. Um, but I try to, and I think again, like, if I was doing this all for myself and it was all just for me, and but ego centered, it's not as fulfilling, for sure not. I think like, you know we all start to realize that one day that receiving a gift is not as good as giving a gift. And
That's
yeah, I
true.
think like, yeah, so I think even though it is cool to sometimes receive a gift, I think like, yeah, it's cool that I've understood that message um early
Mm.
enough. And yeah.
And as you said, it's like it's not because you know you've received the message now that it's not something that you need to nurture, and like it's something you need to tell yourself every day, probably, because uh, it's a hard process. But yeah, at least you got a first, like yeah, a first bell rung, even
Yeah,
that.
no, for sure,
Yeah.
man. Like, I think my biggest victory is that, for sure, is understanding that this is not about me. Like, the day I figured that out was definitely the biggest victory of them all. Yeah.
I was thinking like when was the last moment that you didn't do sports? Because you started so young and you
Mm.
were pretty much obsessed since the beginning about
Yeah.
triathlon, and then or whatever other sports it was during middle school, high school, with like soccer and the other sports. Like, are you able to find peace without sports? Because um, like I don't know, like your maybe some people like we had the chance to talk to a few like professional or like really kind of high performers, let's say in the sport, and I kind of felt that the common theme for them was the obsession that they had for the sports, and I couldn't really answer to the question that what would they do if they wouldn't do sports? Like what would they do in the day? Would they be at peace, or would they be like kind of like, you know, like having
Yeah.
to do something and not being able to be with their own thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, from the very beginning, my identity was pretty much, Jamie the sportsman, whether that was Jamie the
Uh-huh.
guy who did water polo, or the Jamie the swimmer, the biker, the runner, whatever the case may be. It's the it's the label I put on myself. And not only was it something for myself that I saw like this is maybe my identity, but it was also the label that others would put on me. So when I had not seen a person in a while, it was never like, oh, like how are you doing, or how's the family? It's like, want to talk about triathlon, like, oh,
Mm,
but it's always triathlon questions, or what's your new half marathon PB? Like, it's sometimes weird that people see through the hue into what you do. And it was a challenge. It was a challenge in what you're saying. Like, um, I had to like pull myself away and say that like triathlon's not who I am. It's just what I do, and it's how I express who I am. And that's kind of the end message I got there is like, like who is Jamie? Like, I'm a deep thinker. I'm a soft-hearted person that has, a big heart to help people. Um, and I express all of that through Ironman, and through the way that I perform, or the way that I carry myself towards these big goals and these big endeavors. But to ask the question, what would it be other than triathlon, is I can only assume and I can only make assumptions. We never know. But I think that all roads will lead to the same destination for most people, in the sense of um, we have desires on our heart to pursue, but it's always just an expression. So, I could have been maybe an artist. I could have maybe been, I believe that I could have, obviously I got certain talents, not a singer, but like I have certain talents that would get me somewhere. Maybe that's hard work, whatever the case may be. But it could have been something else for sure. I don't believe that like, people say, oh, God has a plan for me, so
Mm.
let's go. I don't believe
Mm.
in that. Like I believe we have choices, and we meet like T junctions. We need to make a choice, and our lives can be altered in the blink of a choice, in the blink
Mm.
of an if someone hits me on the bike tomorrow, I'm not going to say, oh, that was God's plan for me, now I need to
Mm.
be the paralyzed athlete. Like, no, there's certain things that happen in this world. And if I trip, it's just because I was being dumb and didn't look, not because God wanted me to trip. So um but I do think like that's why I always say like pursuing a dream is great, and it's awesome, and you should do that. But the bigger win is looking inward in finding out, when you pursue something, what are you actually expressing? Like, who is William wanting to express in his journey in emulation? Like, the fact that you guys have come to this idea of emulation, there's definitely something deeper that if you had to actually reflect on in your life, or in when the experiences that you've lived, that has made you want to tell other people's stories. It's an expression, of what you guys are doing. So I think that's kind of the thing. It's just expressing. The I'm as an expression.
And do you have friends outside of this world? Like, was it hard for you to make friends uh, during your journey? And now do you have a group of friends with people doing different things and that help you as well to disconnect with the world of triathlon?
Yeah, I think most of my friends are not in the triathlon. I've made incredible friendships along the journey that have become, very big part of my life. But I think, yeah, most of my friends are, working normal jobs or pursuing their own dreams of being whatever they want to be. Um, so yeah, I do have, a lovely community around me that is helping me disconnect and to, really appreciate the what life is, actually is,
Yeah.
which is, just, friendships and connections that you can build over time and these sorts of things. Um, but as you said, like with triathlon becoming a mainstream sport, as every day gets further on, I become more of um, a wanted friend, or like, people now that was playing rugby in high school, all of a sudden wants to do an Ironman, and they know this Jamie guy who does it. So I end up kind of, yeah, I think it's interesting that more and more people are doing triathlon, and more people are taking up the challenge of becoming an Ironman or just run groups or whatever the case may be. Um, yeah, it's
And
interesting.
like, did you see your uh follower count grow at the same time of that trend, or like or was
Yeah,
it like the
I was
Olympics
always
or?
Yeah, I always feel like I had like a fair amount of followers for the level that I
Mhm.
have achieved. Like even now, the followers, the amount of followers I have, I think exceeds the level I've achieved in triathlon to date.
Mhm.
Um, and that's maybe for multiple reasons. Maybe me just, but I did make a conscious decision to post more content and to be more of a spokesperson of the journey at a certain point. So the growth kind of simultaneously happened with the growth of triathlon. So it was almost like
Mm.
one beautiful little everything working together. But um, yeah, I think there definitely is, like, if you go on social media now, like, I think there is a massive trend for, even if it's not triathlon per se, run clubs, keeping
Mm.
fit, endurance sports. It's very cool to see, and every second person is doing it, and yeah, obviously that definitely helps my case.
And but sometimes it doesn't help, like, because we were discussing with another triathlete a few months ago, and he was saying, like, because he was at a stage where it was still difficult to get funding for the season, and he really needed sponsors, and so he needed his brand or his digital brand to be strong, and he found that it was hard to compete with influencers that are not professionals but just like fitness influencers or running influencers. And yeah, I guess maybe my question here is like, how much of how important are social media your in financing your season and in your daily life to, yeah, to be professional?
Yeah, so I think, like, it's a good question, and it's a tricky question, and I'm sitting in a seat where I kind of, like, I'm able to do both. I'm able to be the professional athlete, and I'm able to be the influencer. So throw whatever you want at me, and I'll get it done. But so I haven't I can talk from a place of, like, ease because I can do both, right? Um, so I don't like to comment too much on it, but I think if you're, at least in South Africa, if you're a good enough professional, you should get the support and funding. If you're not a good enough professional, you're gonna be out, you know, out bargained or out by the influencers. Um, Influencing is hard. Like, these videos and stuff
Mm,
is extremely difficult. Like, you guys essentially. I mean, you're not doing content of yourself, but you're doing
mm,
content, and you guys know it's a full-time job.
mm,
So we got to give, like, credit when credit's due to the
mm,
influencers. The biggest thing for me, the part that of it that I struggle with, is if an influencer is not being transparent with their level. It's okay to influence, but you run like a 19-minute 5K. Like, don't call yourself a professional. Don't sell
mm,
that message. That's the one issue I have. And then with the professionals is, you need to accept that this is the reality and try and do something about it. I'm training with multiple athletes that complain like this, but they're not willing to do anything about it. And I think like if you ask any successful businessman, entrepreneur, whatever the case may be, if they didn't just do what they loved to do to get to the point that they had. A lot of it they loved, but there was a lot of stuff like accounting, finances, these sorts of things in the business or hiring people that they didn't enjoy. And yet they had to do it at a certain part. So I think like sitting and complaining and saying like, oh, I don't want to do the social media stuff. I just want to do the fun stuff, like that's you can't really do that. I am lucky. I do enjoy both. I really do enjoy both. So I'm in a lucky position on that front.
Yeah, but yeah, it looks like it's not painful for you to make content. For some people, it feels like a core, like a chore. I don't know how you pronounce that, but it's like, okay, but don't do it then, you know.
Yeah. I think like you have to be authentic. So that's the biggest thing I tell someone. Like if you suck at social media, like lean into sucking at social media. There's people that hate social
Mm.
media that want to see someone suck at social
Yeah.
media. My videos, like I would say 60-70% of them I really enjoy making them, and you see which ones those are because you see that my heart is involved. I've really said something that means something, and that's true and authentic to me. Yeah, so I think like I'm a deep guy, thought provoking, and those are the videos that people see, and those are the ones that go viral. I think like authenticity sells. So like don't try and become something you're not. These influencers that are so good at what they do and get these followers is because they are very much about themselves. They love putting up the camera and like and filming themselves and like putting it down and stuff like that. Like it's who they are at heart almost in a way. Um but I think just being authentic, that's the advice I would give, is like being authentic to yourself and like really like understanding that like if you stuck at social media, lean into that. If you're a more talkative guy, lean into that. If you more like want to write stuff down, if you want to give tips or advice, do that rather. But find, again, it comes back to what we said earlier, like express yourself. It's a
Mm.
form of expression. So I think people see a blueprint of like someone and they're like, okay, I need to do that, but that doesn't align with me, and people can see that immediately, man. And it's sometimes.
Yeah, I guess what you say, and as you said as well, from a place of ease, because that's something that's natural for you and that's working well. But what you say that is that it's part of the game, and you don't understand the game of being a pro athlete well if you don't accept that it's part of the game. And I agree on that side, is that yeah, that's true that in every job there's things that you don't really want to do it, but that are essential. And the thing that maybe saves the face of social media in a way uh, is that, and that's also what you said, is that authenticity is really like rewarded. It's not only the quality of your mic, the quality of your camera. Sometimes with William, we spend 20 hours on the video. We feel like it's gonna be great, but it doesn't work. And in the end, we always know a bit why it didn't work, and it always comes back to like, what's the message? What's the how pure is the message? And of course, it's an algorithm, and it has some flaws, definitely. But on the long run, there's place for every personality. Um,
Mm.
and that's part of the game in some sports. I wouldn't say that's part of every, um, like if you're a soccer player and you're successful, you can put the phone down and it's gonna be okay and you're gonna have a career. But if you're like a cyclist starting or those kind of sport, yeah, it's
And like I'm not gonna like again like it's easy for me. It comes naturally. Some people look better for the camera. That always helps.
mm,
Like of course these things are true. Um, I just think that like also as a professional athlete, if you are a pro, you do have a head start. You've got a much faster 5K time. Like lean in with that or whatever the case may be. Like um, you should be able to. You should, yeah, you've got a bit of a head start in the terms of you actually are good at what you're trying to sell. Um, but I do understand that it is difficult, but try and be creative with it and try and like accept that that is the reality. Um, And you know, the other alternative is you win races.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that's well said. It's harsh, but it's the truth. And
Yeah.
it also it can. I think it's a pleasure once you take it the right way, and once you do things that are genuine to you, it can also make you do things that are not sports and give you like that curiosity that I think is pretty useful tool to have to get your head out of the pressure and the sport. So I guess
Well,
yeah, that's a good. I guess we've circled the subject quite well. Maybe William, it's time for the question of the previous guest because
yeah,
we're
so we started to do something, then we stopped to doing it, and we want to start to do it again because we thought it was good. So you will be the judge after we ask the question whether you liked it or not. But we just asked the previous guest to prepare a question for the next one without knowing who you are. And so his question to you, let me read
Mm.
it on Instagram so I get it right.
we completely stop.
Do I get to know who it is?
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
you
yeah, you
get to
can know who
know
it is.
after the question. Maybe it's a
Okay.
good trick.
Okay. So I have to answer it and then find out who it
Yeah,
is.
but
Yeah.
probably you won't know who it is, but then
Yeah.
you can still. He was a really nice guy.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
podcast will go out soon, so
So
you couldn't
so
know.
what is the one thing that you've done in your career that you regret, and how did you learn from it? I think you mentioned the word regret in the very beginning when you were talking about the moment that you
Don't
were.
give him
But yeah,
hints, William.
Yeah. What is the one thing in my career that I regret? And
And what did you learn from it?
and what did I learn from it? Oh, what is the one thing in my career that I really regret? You know, you always try and live with, oh, I don't regret things, but that's not true. Um, I think, yeah, I think I regret making it about myself. Um, I think I, you know, under the same breath, you don't, because it's led me to where I'm at in a way, of course. But I think that's maybe one thing that like like I didn't want to have to hit rock bottom or mountain peak to find out that there is another way. So I think like I would love to save myself the pain and the sadness that I went through. And I think I could have saved a lot by understanding that um, Jamie is not, the world does not revolve around Jamie. So I think that's the one thing I regret, is making my whole career a point about myself. And what would I change?
No, what did you learn from it? But I guess what you
I
learned
guess
from it, it's
yeah.
the story of the podcast. Maybe if we could like to get you something else, to get something else out of this question, do you have like a silly regret of your career, like a tiny moment, maybe in a race, maybe like in a preparation, maybe like regarding someone?
There's a, I mean, there's many, there's many regrets of doing
Yeah.
one session too much and getting like injured and these sorts of things. I think like off the top of my head, is there one regret in my career that I regret? I don't think so. I think like I think I did it. I think I'm happy with the way that I've done it, and the person I've become.
And is there a habit that you had like 5 years ago or 3 years ago that now you don't
I
have?
got it.
Okay.
I got it. When I was under 19 World Championships. Oh, this is terrible to say on camera. I oh no, this is bad. Okay, under 19 World Champions. I was like 16 or something. I was way too young. I stayed up a little bit too late the night before my race, and I'm not going to say why or where I was, but I overslept the day of the race, and it was a 7 a.m. race. I made the start line with like 1 second, but I ended up DNFing from the race because it was just crazy. That is a
Uh,
regret.
Okay.
I would have
That's
not been where I was the night before. That's what I would not have done.
okay.
yeah.
We'll not dig into where you were, but I think we can imagine
I was a
couple of things.
16-year-old boy, first time overseas, with his eyes wide open. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Okay.
yeah.
That's pretty good.
And then do I have to leave a question or?
Yeah, we.
What we've
I mean,
done,
unless you have one right now, but we
if
can
you have
ask you
one right
after.
now, otherwise we'll ask you after.
I think I have one. Um. Oof. Yeah. I'm gonna do this because this is the question I want everyone to answer.
Okay.
Why do you believe there is a God? And if you don't believe there is a God, why do you not believe there is a God?
Okay. The next
Good luck
guest
to that
is got a
person.
great present at
Good luck to that
the bottom of the tree, and we know who the next guest is, pretty much.
Oh no. But
I
I think
mean,
it's it,
yeah.
it doesn't have to be as deep as what don't make it as deep as what you can do. It's just a cool question to hear.
I think we'll say the question as you said it, and if it's too hard, maybe we'll find a different angle, but with the same vibe
Yeah,
that you had.
I don't think it's hard. It's the first time we talk about this topic on a podcast. I mean, we haven't done that many podcasts, but it's the first time we talk about it. And I feel very at peace right now talking to you. Like, it's like it's not something that is going to create tensions, or you're not
Yeah.
going to be anxious talking about it, right? It's something
No,
that
Yeah.
no, it
you feel
shouldn't be.
really
But that's the.
comfortable and
I think that's the problem with sometimes how it has been perceived. Like some people are hurt by religion and stuff like that. And I'm not proponent of religion, so um, I think that's maybe why sometimes it becomes a tricky one. But yeah, it's not that crazy.
Yeah, I guess like for me, how I see it is like as long as there's respect from both of the sides, because either side, if you do not respect the other one, then you've got an issue of your own, and it's much bigger than the actual topic. So I
Yeah,
guess and once you feel that there's a respect, then there's no wrong answers, because in the end it's everyone's journey, and it
yeah,
can change as well. It evolves.
exactly. Nice.
Yeah, I
is there
think
one last
we're
topic you want to talk about? Or I think we've done a fair share of questions at this point, so
yeah.
there might not be any. But if there's one thing you'd like to talk about, or maybe you can just tell to people where they can find you, your socials, and these kind of things, that can be helpful as well.
Yeah. I'm Jamie Riddle everywhere. I'm sure you'll find me. I should pop up, but if I'm not popping up, then I'm not doing my job good enough.
Okay.
But no, I think it's been a insightful conversation, and I've really enjoyed it. We got deep, but we also had some fun time. So it's really cool. Yeah, and it's been a pleasure.
All right, this was Robin and William for the 6th episode of the Emulation podcast. If you made it until here, please make sure to leave a 5-star review. It helps a lot more than you might think. And before I leave you to enjoy another episode of our wonderful podcast, I usually advise you to give a follow to Jamie Riddle. Big things are coming for him in 2025, so you really don't want to miss out. All right, this is it. Have a great day, evening, whatever the case might be, and we see you on the next episode.